Hi, my name's James Lemon. I'm the founder of Otolo, and welcome to our Early Careers series. We've been going for about 24 months now, really with this idea that mentorship and learning from peers is a great way to rebuild the hospitality industry. And a few friends of ours have got together and we thought, look, it's a really tough time to start careers in hospitality now. So what better way to give people a bit of confidence, the skills they need to get ahead, than get a few friends that we trust and know a lot about the space onto an event where we just get a chance to field questions, share thoughts, inspire people, hopefully, that hospitality careers are amazing. They are easy to get started in and they are easy to get ahead in. So I'm going to welcome my co-host to the stage first in the first of 4 sessions we're going to be running on early careers. Craig, welcome to our new event series. How are you doing?
Good, James. Thanks for the invitation. Great to be here.
Oh, it's great. I think it's nice to have my massively overzealous energy and your slightly more calm and considerate approach. It's probably a good balance.
Maybe not for too long, James. Maybe not for too long. It's good to be
exactly. here. No, so let's go kind of top tip, Craig. What really is it that gets someone started in a hospitality career, do you think?
Gosh, I think it has to be that connection with the industry and the passion. I think if thinking back to my early career, it was definitely the connection with people and that love of service and experiences that drew me into it at a very early age, personally. And I think if you have that connection, a lot of people fall into the industry as well as seek it out. So I think that natural passion is key.
Yeah, a love of people and the work. I think you're absolutely right. No, fab. Well, look, really excited to be with you for the first of 4 weeks in a row. I'm sure we'll be an amazing double act. It's going to go super well. But we've got a couple of guests with us today. So while they're getting ready in the green room, do you want us to give a bit of an intro as to kind of who you are, Mum, and kind of your path in hospitality?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the founder of a talent partner called Mum. We exist we provide hospitality talent for the industry. I've been in the industry all of my life. I worked in hospitality since the age of 19 many years ago, and initially in operations in very fast-paced environments, London venues, music venues, and after quite a few years moved into recruitment 10 years ago this year, and worked agency side, worked for 3 of the larger hospitality agencies before creating my own. And I guess I created my own talent partner business to do things 100% my way, essentially. And Mum is all about looking after people, doing a good job and taking care of talent, whether that's the individual or the talent for the business.
Sounds good. I think we're definitely in safe hands. So our first session is all about CV, that kind of online and offline profile, I suppose, we carry around with us. Feel free. Let's go ahead and introduce our guest, Craig, and we'll get the ball rolling.
Absolutely. So I'm delighted to be joined by Gurjit Sandhu, who is with Melbourne Hotel Group. Gurjit, or Gurj as he is known to myself, and I go back a long way, and used to work together many moons ago at the London Eye, and have kept in touch ever since. And I'm sure he will do himself a much better intro than that.
I don't know. I think we both had hair when we first started at the Eye, didn't we, Craig? Was that a lie? That's a blatant lie. So thank you for having me. My name's, as Craig said, my name's Gurjit Sandhu. I'm the Group Learning Development for Melbourne Hotel Group. You might know a few of our hotels, Claridge's, the Berkeley, the Connaught, and we have 2 new properties, Melbourne Beverly Hills and Melbourne Riviera. As Craig mentioned, I started working way back with him for Merlin Entertainments, and I've moved from them to Jumeirah Hotels, looking after their European region, and also work for Dorchester Collection, and really love helping people to flourish. Have been a career coach, and have worked in learning development at different levels. So really excited to hopefully share some tips with you and discuss some more.
And next up, we have your very own James Luce Watson from.
Hi.
Who's joining us en route to a birthday weekend away. So fully committed to the cause. Doesn't necessarily make Doesn't make for the highest production values, but great to have you here, Luce.
Oh, I've got a great backdrop. Good to be here. I'm Luce. I've joined James and Otolo just before Christmas, actually. My background is a mix of hospitality and events. I've worked for the likes of Glastonbury, Ministry of Sound, Coca-Cola, Copper Club. Really excited to get this early careers campaign going, really. I know that a lot of people struggle when they first start out. I certainly did. No one kind of equipped me with the tools to tell me where to go. I've had to do a lot of that figuring out myself. So I'm really excited. I think everyone here has got some really nice tips that'll be really good to share them.
Sounds good. So, Craig, feel free to get the ball rolling. I guess one thing to say for those watching, whether you're on our YouTube, whether you're on the Otolo platform, whether you're on LinkedIn, do fire your questions away. You know, you've got a great wealth of expertise here, particularly through Gurj and Luce. I mean, Craig and I are mostly making it up as we go along, but there's definitely some people here who know some stuff. So if you've got questions around applications, CVs, getting started, managing your time or your health, give us a shout. We're here to ask questions. We'll be fielding those through the sessions. But Craig, over to you.
Well, I guess where to start is the big question, and I guess when prepping for today, I kind of cast my minds back many years, and just to think how I went about it. And I guess in hindsight, I probably learned many ways not to do things. So there's so much CV advice out there. Generally, where do people start? And I guess, Gurj, when we were talking this week, you had some good ideas about, you know, how people should get going and kind of kick off that CV prep.
Yeah, I think we spoke about there's a random story about Procrustes, but I'll let you look up at Procrustes and his search for perfection. Apparently he used to be a hotelier and used to chop people's bodily parts off. But anyway, hopefully we can edit this part out of the but yeah, to be honest, start anywhere, because I think for those of us that are perfectionists and you know, have to go down that whole process of making it look good, making it you know, making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's crossed, it can be quite a daunting process. Someone once gave me a great book called What Color Is Your Parachute? And it said, do a skills audit, do a values audit. In the long run, that was amazing because I knew what I wanted to do, but in the short term, it was quite daunting. So I think start anywhere, begin building that CV if you haven't done it already, and keep it up to date. I mean, the first couple of things.
Yeah, and I think one thing I was kind of wondering about is, you know, we talk a lot about journaling these days. We talk a lot about knowing yourself, and I sometimes feel like we've maybe been around quite a while. We've been told to read all these books. I'm not sure I did when I was just getting started. What do you start with? Do you just start with a piece of paper and just write down, you know, what do I think I'm good at? When I've done a day's work I've really enjoyed, what was it I was doing? Like, there's some key questions that we just think, you know what, this is not a big exercise. You don't have to know yourself, but you should probably just know what you like, what you don't like, some of those basics.
Yeah, I think there are things that you're inclined to, aren't there? Even actually, you know, sitting down with a piece of paper, is that a right place to start? Go for a walk. What gets you buzzing? You know, relate to those sort of values, the emotions that you want to be feeling, and the state you want to be in. I think sitting down at a desk in a white cube room like I am actually isn't the most creative environment. Isn't going to be something that's going to show that you're inclined to. You know, if I was in true L&D mode, I'd have my flip chart up and my post-it notes. But what works for you guys?
That's right. It's so individual, isn't it? And I guess, yeah, we need to remember that there's no real right. And I got quite bogged down when I was doing starting to do some research for this. There's tons of advice out there. There's just like so much to read up on. And I think that in itself builds a bit of a pressure for people thinking, oh my God, I need to read up on all of this. I mean, yes, accuracy should be top of the list. I guess a connection to your personality is another, individuality. But I wrote down real, relevant, and ready as my kind of key words for today. And real being having a CV that reflects your personality and your successes, being relevant to who you're applying to, and not necessarily changing the CV, but being relevant to yourself and the industry or the company you want to connect with. And ready, one of the things that I never used to do was keep it updated, and it was the biggest mistake ever, because then when you get approached for a job like I normally did, or see a role that I wanted to apply for, I would forget all of the stuff that I'd succeeded at and achieved, and it's really difficult to go back. So I think keeping it updated and accurate is key.
Yeah, I got a really good tip once. I had a manager who was really good at performance reviews. And before my performance review, she was used to say, write yourself a bit of a CV of the year, right? Bring to me like what you worked on, but really what you did, what you delivered, and what impact you had and what you learned. And it meant that when I moved on from that job, 3 or 4 years later, I did have those records, because you just never remember that little project. And the fact is, often when we're at interviews or when we're writing a CV, it's the little side projects that we really want to show off. Actually just, I was a duty manager for 2 years. Like, I can picture that. But it's that time I joined a project team on our community strategy, or I joined a charity group, or I helped implement a bit of new technology. That's what the interviewer is looking for, right? It's probably change and proactivity and being self-motivated. So I love that idea, Craig, keeping the CV up to date, or at least keeping a track of stuff you get up to. I think it's probably rule one for careers.
And that kind of stuff, James, is exactly what connects with people. The duty manager shifts, people just switch off. It's just like a job description. But that kind of stuff that people can engage, it shows personality, it shows passion, it shows inspiration and so many other different things. So, yeah.
Love it. Luce, what's your take on some of this?
Yeah, I definitely think like getting started on projects, to your point. I think when I first started out, I kind of knew that I wanted to be in entertainment, music, hospitality, but didn't kind of know where to get started. And I don't think my college certainly kind of didn't help me in terms of kind of, specialist recruiters like just Craig, like I didn't know that kind of network existed. So I had to be quite self-sufficient in that sense. But what I did find was I knew kind of what my passion points were. So actually going out and volunteering, even just locally, I volunteered for like 3 years for a local music festival. But it was really good because I didn't have that kind of experience and I hadn't really got going, but it was a nice project to put on my CV. Started to learn about kind of social media, started to self-teach myself like Photoshop and different things. And actually then I found when I went to interviews, I had something to talk about. Whereas in before, it was a bit of a struggle kind of just getting your foot in. You almost need to carve your own path, I think, initially sometimes, rather than kind of waiting for the right job to land.
Yeah. For me, we've really tried to recruit a lot of apprentices or junior people into the business. And one of my biggest learnings is that everyone can have that volunteer experience. Everyone can have their self-starter project. And there's a really interesting debate at the moment, isn't there? People saying, entry-level jobs that expect experience. And you see a lot of kind of thrashing each other on channels like LinkedIn. But actually, I don't think it's unreasonable if someone's applying to a job in marketing that they can show you a link to a website that they've built, right? If someone wants to work in events, actually, I helped out at this local organization, move to an online event or run a fair, or, if you want to work in a space, doesn't it just stand out a mile when someone has spent a few evenings or a few weekends getting some experience that they can talk about and makes for a much more interesting discussion, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think on that as well, there's so many times where we've not necessarily recruited someone because of the skill, but then once they're actually in-house, you never know when you need an amazing photographer. You never know when you need a florist, and it's just like, oh wow, that's really cool. And suddenly, they're building their profile within the business. So sharing those skills is really important.
Yeah, I love that. Does an organisation like Mayborn, I guess, talk us through what happens from the employer side with a CV? Do you find that you end up, do you have computer systems kind of looking for keywords? And then when someone joins, do you ever go back to it and check whether you've got a florist? I'd love to kind of understand in a bigger business that a lot of people, I'm sure, would aspire to join. What's happening after you click that send button?
Yeah, I think as a business that very much is about people, we very much rely on people. So we have our recruitment team who are fantastic, with the bulk of CVs that they have to go through, but it's very much about the values fit for our business. So I have to say, hand on heart, we don't have a talents log for all those skills. But yeah, maybe someone out there can build us something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think for us, those skill sets, sharing those skill sets are hugely important. But yeah, the individual things that come out in the hobbies, it's got me thinking about what Luce was saying. Some of the things I used to do, which actually I knew hand on heart were things I loved doing, whether it was going back to my old school and helping them with football coaching, or then mentoring, or maybe helping someone at a local community centre. It's those sort of things that actually you start realising that, when I said I want to help people to flourish, it's not just around L&D, it's a wider well-being, connection piece that's there for me. And I soon started realising that, if I don't do the work on myself and actually, going back to journaling or keeping a document of things I love doing, then how are you going to see the trend and join the dots in your own world of the things that you love? And actually maybe asking your best mates what they think you're great at.
Yeah, that's really.
I think it's really.
Sorry, Luce.
Okay.
No, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I think it's always really interesting. I think it's really easy for you to forget. And I've kind of struggled with this in the past, like where I've done kind of a lot of roles and a lot of events. You kind of forget to sell yourself. I think particularly if you're not someone who is like overtly kind of, wants to be kind of front and center stage. I think like that can be quite daunting to kind of write all of that out and kind of remember. And I think sometimes you can kind of be your biggest enemy in the sense that like you know what you've done, but actually if you're not physically spelling it out on a CV for someone, then they don't really know you. And actually, in order to kind of get to that interview stage, you have to be giving enough away so that people want to kind of find out more.
I was just going to say, it's quite interesting what you say about passions and doing stuff early on in life in terms of giving back, or however you want to kind of frame that. But I was fundraising as a child at like 4, 5, 6 years old, and you just kind of sparked that kind of memory of that. And I'm still fundraising for charities at this at this age. Your passions don't change, do they? They build, but and they evolve, I guess. But yeah, had I known at a child that that those would I have developed those as a teenager, as a young adult? Probably more so, rather than just kind of drifting but still doing it on and off like years later.
Yeah, I think it's funny, isn't it? 'Cause I sometimes get asked to tell my kind of hospitality story, and it's only really like the last year that I've gone, actually, I worked in this cafe for 5 years as a Saturday job, dishwashing and making sandwiches. And then my mum had a B&B because it's the Isle of Wight, and that's what you did in the summer. So I'd be in the tent in the garden helping kind of make the beds and breakfast. I never really thought about it as this hospitality DNA. But I also think you don't need that, right? What we see on Otolo is you have people who are super driven, right? I'm going to the hotel schools. I know the work experience I need. I want to be a GM. I'm all over Gurjit's LinkedIn profile. He's going to give you that placement. You also see people who maybe, they know they like to serve and they get a real kick out of work in restaurants, bars, hotels. But I think I would say the majority of people, and I think really I was like this, who are actually just sitting there going, I don't really know. I've been told to keep doors open. That seems like a pretty good place to start, but I don't really know myself yet, and I don't really know what I want to do. I think what's great about hospitality is it is easy to get your foot in the door, right? It is about attitude and hard work, not about the right schools and the right grades. So I guess what would you expect to see on a CV? I guess, Luce, you've hired teams, Gurjit. What would you expect to see on a CV in those early years that maybe reflect the soft skills a bit? Sure. Do you want me to? I'll go, okay, sure. I think a mix. I get that some people haven't had the opportunity to kind of do internships or kind of have that entry level role. I think kind of to Craig's kind of point, like any kind of passion points in terms of any kind of volunteering, just in terms of building your soft skills, right? Like even if it is just volunteering for something that's not even kind of related to the job that you want to do or kind of your passion point, but actually giving up that time and giving back. I think those are kind of the key important bits, because actually a lot of that comes around communication, which you need in any job anyway.
a lot of it around kind of being organized, timekeeping and all the rest of it. So I think kind of a real mix of that. And, I'm not expecting to see kind of 5 pages of like loads of work experience and jobs. And it's great, great. Some people do that and go out and kind of get loads of internships and loads of apprenticeships and do that. And that's amazing. But I think it goes back to your point, James, like a lot of it's around kind of attitude. And actually, if you've got enough interesting other like stuff to talk about, whether it's kind of hobbies, soft skills, what you're kind of doing in your free time with your family and friends, even like it's just having those kind of talking points to talk about how you solve problems in the same way that you would in a kind of business and in your personal life as well, using those soft skills. It all kind of crosses over, right? It's not so much about even anymore, I think, just generally about kind of your hard experience. It's very much about, and we'll kind of come onto this I suppose in the other sessions, but values and kind of what actually drives you.
And that's that whole connecting with, whether it's volunteering or internships or whatever it is, it's a really good place to probably start from the networking side as well. So connecting with businesses, we all talk about great community platforms like LinkedIn and other social platforms, community boards. It's such a good place to start networking on a very informal basis and connecting with people that are working for businesses that you aspire to work for or have worked for on a work experience basis. So I think when I look back, particularly when I first stepped into recruitment, I was encouraged to connect with the world. And one of my biggest regrets was trying to connect with the world. Probably one of my biggest pieces of advice for people stepping into careers, early careers, is to be appropriate with the connections. And I've spent a lot of time over the last few years really refining the connections that I have and keeping the circle close, but the network wide, but that of value, in terms of reciprocal.
Yeah. And I think you get that a lot with kind of LinkedIn connections, don't you? I think I certainly feel like I get spammed with a lot of LinkedIn requests, but at the same time, it's not hard for me to accept someone if they say, I see you're interested in this, I've just read an interesting article, here's a link, let's just stay in touch for the future, or I'd love to hear more of your ideas sometime. Straight away, you're on the front foot. Oh, this is a wonderful person. And I do get a lot of students, recent grads, people early in their careers doing that, but it's just that extra step of like, leave a message. First step, and second step, just find out a little fact about them, something you've got in common, or something you think they may be interested in, because that's really what we all want from LinkedIn or Otolo, these platforms, right? We want a bit more knowledge. We want to know people who have something to share.
I think we'll just ask for help as well, right? Like I've certainly had a few students and kind of people that are starting out in their kind of initial early stages of careers in the past, who perhaps wanted to get into a festival or one of the big brands, and they just come and ask for advice, and I'll always give it, And I think a lot of people, particularly in hospitality, they like, you might get the odd kind of no, but 99% of people are going to say yes. And actually, if you just hold your hand up and say, look, I want a bit of help on this, then most people are more than willing to kind of give 5 minutes an hour to kind of help develop skills or give advice in kind of the best way forward. We've actually had an interesting question, guys. I think we should answer it while we're on the topic. So Peter has asked, how about the video CV, and how would you use that in hotel work? Craig, this is a really interesting one for you, because I know you have some kind of thoughts on the CV and kind of how it's evolved. So should I hand this one to you?
Yeah, by all means. I like videos. I think generally the CV will at some point, I like to think that the CV will at some point actually die out, and I will actually think that personality, I know, controversial, whilst it's a great info and reference point, particularly if it's accurate, and should be there, I think it's far more about this, and it's far more about the personality, the engagement piece, the response, the way people respond on video is really interesting. I've had some, particularly since COVID, really interesting conversations with people who say one thing on the CV, and appear to be something on the CV, but when it comes to the video time and having the video time, are completely not their CV, or not what you expect, and that's not a criticism, or a a very general statement. But I think the video CV, to come back to the question, will develop, and I know that obviously there's various people out there, programming video CVs, but I think it does help. My only thing with it is the time it takes to go through videos, and that's a resource issue for sure. I don't know if they've developed AI for that just yet, but
funnily enough, we use I'm with you, and I think we're in a really interesting transition period, aren't we? Where you still expect a CV, but generally the first thing you do is look someone up on LinkedIn, or if there is a video, you find that. So it's a really interesting one, and you do need to manage CV plus LinkedIn plus online community plus potentially video. We did a lot with video interviewing. It's a little bit different. You're not just putting a CV out there, but you're actually responding to something. And it was a really interesting experiment. Firstly, the drop-off is huge. Only a small percentage of people even do it. And then you get everything from, I've not done any preparation, this is just me, which is absolutely fine, by the way, to I'm wearing a suit in my spare bedroom because I've been prepping for this for hours, which is, again, what someone would do for an interview, so not necessarily a crisis. But it's really interesting. My take on it is genuinely that's okay, because what you've got is getting so much easier to apply for roles, right? You can apply for roles now with one click on LinkedIn, or you can just send off your CV. I think it's okay for employers, instead of getting inundated with 500 CVs to read through and potentially saying no to people that they've never even heard from too quickly. I think it's okay to have a 1 minute or 90-second review where you can just get a sense of someone's energy and whether they've read anything about your company, whether they can identify with what the role is. I think if you could do those two things on a video, that's brilliant. But it's really interesting that the drop-off was so high. I was also left feeling, well, what if I've just missed some great people because they're highly introverted, or that's just not something they feel comfortable doing? And so I constantly wrestled with that. And it was, I didn't quite solve it, but maybe it's a transition period. I don't know, Gurj, you're living in a world of many CVs. So
I mean, we've had a few video CVs come through, and actually, I think it's been quite refreshing for the recruitment teams to, to step aside and go, this is different. I can see the person's personality. I can see they've put a lot of effort in. Having said that, I've also seen that some that are quite okay. You probably shouldn't have shared that with us, or actually that's a bit too much. But I think that sort of hybrid approach is cool. I'm going to take the old school approach and say, well, actually, print will never die. And I think those of us, you can't write on a video for one. So how, I think having that personality and being able to demonstrate that on a call, showing that passion is fantastic. But me personally, I would still like to see those competencies documented there and how people have done stuff.
And it feels a bit multi-channel, right? It feels like actually maybe we're transitioning, maybe we're not, but unfortunately you have to do it all, right? You do need a sharp, well-written CV reviewed by a friend so it's got no typos. You do need a great LinkedIn profile with a nice picture, a little bit of info about you, and ideally you've connected with some people in the industry. You do need to maybe do a short video and put that on your LinkedIn or link to it. If you do it all, frankly, Gurj, you might prefer a CV. I might prefer a video, but frankly, you don't know who is going to be reviewing your application. So, so you do probably have to get it right. A bit like if you're a shop, you're selling online, you're selling in person, you're putting your stuff on delivery apps and stuff like that. Really interesting.
At the same time, you also need to lock down your personal Instagram account if it shows certain photos.
Yes.
I was literally going to say that, like, as much as it's about kind of CV, it's also about personal brand. You hear like coaches talk about it a lot these days, but it is just making sure you are doing a bit of a sense check on all of those things.
Yeah, and I think you can have, I definitely saw some applicants, and again, I only check people's Instagrams when they're going for marketing roles, social media roles, but you see a lot of people have got two, right? They've got a locked one, and then they've got, James Lemon photos or James Lemon marketing, and that's their kind of space to show off what they know business-wise. Really interesting. Craig, let's get back to the core CV. We've got another question come in, which I think is probably teeing up some of the stuff you've got in mind anyway. So Claire is one of the lecturers at University of Northampton, one of our big Otolo partners, often asked by students, how do I make my CV stand out? What are some of those touches, graphics, imagery, photo, no photo. Let's kind of get into this one and lay down some tips.
Gosh, well, hi Claire, thanks for the question. I think it does vary depending on the type of role that you're going for. I think it also depends, if you look at, say, marketing roles, for example, I think there is an expectation to see that creative flair on a CV. I personally think that photos are good and have become more expectant. It's almost like the gateway to, having an initial Teams call. But again, not everybody is comfortable with that, so I don't think you should feel pressured. I think a nice grabby, if that's the right phrase, headline, catchy headline. I've seen some great examples recently of things that aren't predictable, and that's probably the way I would put it. And certainly individual with flair, I think, are the keywords that I would probably use.
Yeah, I think that's it. So really interestingly, having gone very pro video, I am not at all interested in a photo on a CV. I do not know why. I do not know why that exists as a feature. You either prove you've gone and paid for some modeling, or you just haven't. But I've never put a photo on a CV. At the same time, I'd probably come up the slightly more kind of corporate route. I was in finance and strategy planning roles. So yeah, I'm very much like 2 pages, size 11 font, very, very structured. But at the same time, I always had that 2 lines at the top that was, I was trying to say something, as you say, that stood out. But also that's what I tailored for each role, rather than going through. For a while, I used to try and keep various versions of the CV, but it just became too time consuming. But that 2 lines at the top, you can always just check that what you're applying for is what you actually say you want to do. Like I've always wanted to be a, head of innovation at Lego. This is my dream job. Just change it at the top, and those 2 lines. And what's hilarious is when people don't. They've obviously tried to get too clever, and they've personalized too much of their CV for one company. And then it's like you get their CV, and it's like, oh, I've always wanted to work in, graphic design for a children's author. That's fantastic. That is not what this job is. Does that mean you put them in the bin straight? I just don't know. It's a hard one. But I'm actually for much more of a traditional CV. No photo, description. But you're right. It's 2 lines to catch their attention. And then it's really clear statements on each bit of experience, what you did, and what impact you had. That's me being old school now, I think, on the paper CVs.
I think the impact bit is the important bit, isn't it? Like you see it a lot on CVs, and I think particularly when people are kind of in their early stages of careers, it very much becomes kind of the job description, right? Which is lovely. But I think most of us kind of know, especially when we are recruiting, kind of what these jobs entail anyway. It's like you say, James, it's more about kind of, one of the side projects or something that you've kind of taken on perhaps outside of your actual day-to-day job role, where you've actually had a really strong impact and have delivered like a fabulous result. And those are the things that I personally would really want to see on a CV, because it shows that someone's a bit of a self-starter, that they're happy to roll their sleeves up and get stuck in, and actually they're really proud of the work that they've produced.
Also, let's not forget the whole LinkedIn thing. So many more people are putting a LinkedIn link on their CV to go to. I mean, personally, if you've got a LinkedIn profile, you should definitely be happy to have a photo on it. I don't see the point at all of having LinkedIn profile without, some kind of photo. We won't get into those horror stories of an example. I mean, it's a profile. That's what it's there for, right? Just like your own platform, James and Luce. What is the point?
You're right. I agree. I guess I'm the CV traditionalist, but you're right. Online, I think photos and videos are definitely the way forward. I can't quite square that circle.
I'm going to weigh on your side, James, and say, I'm with that traditional approach as well. But then again, I think someone just mentioned there about photos being a must in Asia, and it's about you bang on actually. Who are the audience that you're afraid hitting with your CV, and actually how does that relate? How does your brand tone of voice in the way you're writing relate to their brand, and is there alignment there? Because if there isn't alignment, then are you going to find your tribe? Is that the right company for you culturally anyway?
But at the same time, I guess, can you overthink it, right? I guess if you did have a photo, do you ever think you'll get an employer who's like, I can't believe they've done a photo. This is a no. So maybe I don't think you need to be overconfident. Be like, okay, I'm applying for a job in this country or this company. I think, if you want to, ask your community, like ask your tribe, like go and ask some friends. If you're in a couple of these micro communities like Otolo or Event Grads or some of the kind of community boards you were talking about, ask the question, hey, I'm applying for a job in Japan or in France, what's generally done? But I think generally having a clean CV that is what you've done, what impact you had, a little bit of personal information, maybe stick a picture, nice blurb on what you've done. You can't go wrong. And again, I can't think of a single person who disagrees with you, Craig. You have to have a LinkedIn profile. It is your online CV. If I go on someone's LinkedIn and it's not got anything on it, then I am likely to not move forward with that candidate. Partly because every business now is online, and as a member of staff, you will be inevitably representing the brand somehow. You need to be pretty proud of where you work now or what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got a question, Craig. I think it's an interesting one. I certainly experienced it kind of when I was even early on in Ministry of Sound, and I actually run the creative studio, and it goes back to kind of Claire's point. Like a lot of people were using graphic-led CVs, right? So they weren't plain black and white. They weren't that kind of traditional route, and actually they're quite disruptive. I think you kind of expect it in creative. If you're going for a kind of graphic design role, creative director, you expect to see these things anyway. But what really threw me was we had a CV come through on the printer one day, and it was for a junior A&R assistant. And they had fully kind of, I suppose it goes back to James's point, still marketing. So you kind of want to see that creative flair. But it came through on the printer, and everyone was like, oh, wow, that's really disruptive. Made us all kind of stop and talk around the printer for 5 minutes. What do you think of the kind of role of more of a kind of portfolio CV place now? Do you see a lot of that? Do you think that's a good thing?
Definitely, particularly for creative marketing, design-led roles. So particularly on a senior level, I think there's definitely an expectation to have access to a portfolio or a link through the CV. Absolutely. PR is another big area of for that. So again, massive piece of advice for anyone starting out and looking to work in those areas: build that portfolio, build the journey, and evolve it. I speak to so many people who are head of director level who should have started that back in the day and had that involvement. I guess it doesn't just show the involvement, but it shows your progress as an individual and the types of things that you've worked on, and I guess your improvement overall.
Yeah, love that. Yeah,
I think inevitably these days you that whole video piece or the showreel piece is going to come into it. Even as a bartender, you look at some of the stuff the guys at the Connaught Bar here do. I mean, I joke with them. I think they're on YouTube and social more than they are in the bar. But that's the world they live in. It's sort of a circle that sort of evolves. So yeah.
Yeah, you're right there, Gurj. Actually, like we should be thinking about that more and more for people away from the creative areas, and should be looking at that as a sort of expectation.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of interesting angles, isn't it? I think you see it sometimes in places like a Google or a Facebook, where the engineer or a product designer, someone who a bit more back office, will write a blog about their company, how they work and their values. And they always stand out a mile to me. I'm like, someone in this company has, and it kind of is, it is them self-promoting. It is them telling what they're up to. And it is like a kind of a snapshot of their current project. So it's a bit of like a CV. I always just go, how much must you love your job and your project to take the time and just write that? I think that's amazing. So top tip to anyone out there who's enjoying their jobs right now: put a bit of pen to paper, put a blog up on LinkedIn. It's completely free, and just say what you're up to. And I think for those people to are taking Luce's advice and out there getting lots of volunteer and work experience, it sits alongside your CV that, hey, I did this 3-week stint at a festival, or I helped a local charity with their online website or their own blog page, and here's that story. I think to your point, Craig, you look back 5 years from now and you've got 10 examples like that. I mean, that's a richness that I definitely don't have to fall back on, but I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Really good. So let's get into some specifics. So Pete's asked another great question here around disabilities. Yeah, would love to kind of get a sense of where you guys' heads are at. Obviously, hospitality is known for being an incredibly a kind of hard industry. It has its own kind of mental health challenges, a lot of burnout going on. But obviously, it wants to be very diverse and inclusive. It wants to have people from all kinds of backgrounds. So what are our thoughts on this? How much should that stuff stand out on a CV or perhaps a cover letter? Gurj, I don't know. And again, maybe you could share what you've seen.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen anyone list a disability on their CV. And to be honest, for us, it's regardless of that disability. You know, if that person is right, then we need to make a space for them in our workplace. And you know, having been on a few sort of diversity and inclusion seminars and sort of roundtables, it's interesting. I don't think the industry has done much to evolve that, you know, even for those who are visually impaired, and how that works. So I think from my point of view, if someone wants to put it there out in writing on the CV, great. You know, at interview, it should come out, and you know, we have occupational health to work with those who have disabilities, whether they're you know, quite visual or actually they're mental health related. So yeah, I think it's entirely up to the person and whether they want to do that.
Yeah, I guess the important thing is you want to land in a company that's right for you, don't you?
Yeah.
The company and its values, the role that you'll be doing. So if you really do think it'll have an impact on your enjoyment of that role and your ability to contribute to the company, it's a two-way thing. You kind of owe it to put it out there, because otherwise you might land in a company that's just completely wrong. You know, if you just don't have, you know, if it's not right for you to be on your feet all day, adapting to different types of guests in a multicultural environment at high speed, if that really doesn't give you a lot of energy, then there's certain roles in hotels that probably aren't quite right. At the same time, there's roles that do have a lot more structure, and those that take a lot more time, or they're sitting instead of standing, or they're flexi hours. I know that's a real theme of the industry, right, Gurj? Is actually, hey, maybe we just need to bring people in different sets of working hours to bring a broader group of people to the industry.
Yeah, and I think that's how we start off, you know, in terms of actually finding out what you're inclined to and things that you enjoy doing. Well, actually, if you don't like to do those long shifts or be on your feet all day, you know, actually, if you don't enjoy people, well, you know, there might be a role for you in hospitality. It might not be in that, you know, that barman position or that waiter position. And absolutely, you know, we have some great people that work with us in IT. So it's finding your space in a technical manner, and also in that personality manner as well.
I've never seen anybody either, just to answer the question, just ever kind of raise that on a CV or be proactive volunteering that information. And I think it's definitely one for the interview process, if you want to call it that, the application process. And I think everybody does have that featured on their application. Most companies do. So yeah, I would leave it for that stage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. Okay, really good. Craig, where next? We're in the dissecting of the CV. Where are we going next on our journey?
Gosh, I guess, should we talk about expectations, what people can expect when sending off that CV, clicking the apply button, and, you know, not hearing anything, or maybe hearing something and then nothing, or then maybe getting an interview and then not hearing for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, I'm constantly hearing horror stories. I don't say I get it all right personally all of the time. You know, I struggle sometimes to go back to people, but I like to go back to people, and I think it's important. But I think for anyone starting out, I think people have to have a realistic approach and expectation. I think planning is key. I think when applying for jobs, and I give this advice all of the time, but treating it as a project rather than an obsession is probably the best way that I would give early careers, you know, a start, you know, to log everything, to log applications, which channel it's gone through, who it's gone through, note follow-ups, and always treat it as a hobby or a project. I think so many people get obsessed with it, particularly over the last 2 years. Sadly, a lot of people have been so obsessed and focused on it, and it takes over. And it can have that danger of taking over and sadly having an effect, on sort of your general well-being. And so I think I would definitely recommend that. And gosh, what was the question now?
Expectations, Craig. Expectations.
So I think people should expect to be, all of those things, not here, and then not here, but also be appropriate when following up. When I worked agency side, I always remember a candidate. I managed to find him a job, and he loved the job. And when he got the job, he said, "I don't know if you ever realised, but you were my Wednesday call, or you were my Wednesday man." And I said, "What do you mean you were my Wednesday man?" He said, "You were my Wednesday call. I used to call you every Wednesday." And I was like, "I knew you called me often, but I didn't realise it was every Wednesday." And he had obviously got, set out to do that deliberately to keep in my mind and to keep at the forefront of my mind. And it obviously works because I did actually end up helping him. And I'm not saying a weekly call is what every recruiter or person in-house wants to hear, but, it's about being appropriate and managing it and having that outlook.
I think that's right. I think there's we need to have this conversation, right? Because I think the world is diverging in opinions in lots of areas. We shouldn't do this in the world of finding work for people. But my sense is that the easier it's become to apply for a job, you have to take with that a pinch of salt that it's going to be harder to give people personal feedback. When we were recruiting, and if you have 500 CVs, and I'm on my own, this is my number 2 in a small business, I'm already spending 3 or 4 hours reviewing those, watching interviews. Yeah, I absolutely tried to get back to everyone. But at the same time, if you've applied in one click and I'm one of 20 things you've applied to today, it's understandable that an employer can't give you kind of personalized feedback. And I think I definitely see a lot of aggressive notes on LinkedIn being like, you shouldn't even recruit unless you're prepared to write to everyone back personally. And I'm like, I think it kind of weighs up how much effort each person's put in. Because your point, Craig, if someone says, hey, a week later, just putting this to the top of your pile, because actually I really love this about Otolo, and I've done this thing which I think would be perfect. Could we have a quick chat? That's the kind of thing that person will definitely get some personal feedback because they have shown this is important to them. I need to show it's important to me. But I think if we live in a world where everything's automated, we call it ghosting, but actually I'm sure, Gurj, you've had lots of candidates ghost you, but it just means that priorities are shifting and they've found something else. They applied for 100 jobs and they didn't ring to tell you they weren't interested anymore. And I think we probably need to give each other a little bit. But
it's relationships. Yeah, it's relationships through and through, right? Some work, some don't. I mean, certainly there's those calls that we picked up the call and picked up the phone and we've seen someone that's CV is amazing. You pick them up and you say, "Hello, I'm Gurjit. I'm calling from Mayborn Hotels," and they're like, "Mayborn who?" And like, they don't even remember they've sent the CV or what was the role again? Like, okay. And it, for me, it's some of those basic manners in relationship building of actually, whether it's a touch point of a courtesy email afterwards or after the interview, or just the basics of remembering who you've applied to, going to Craig's point of having that structure in place. But yeah, I mean, it would be great for us to be in contact and touch base with everyone who applies. Is it realistic? Not in this world until we, I think, get our AI bots involved, which, there's probably businesses doing it right now in the hospitality arena.
Yeah, but again, that's not going to be incredibly personal. It might be factually this is why you didn't get the job. I think two other thoughts that spring to mind. One is, Craig, I think people need to understand that recruitment model, right? And I was taught this very early on. It's like, a bit like people say, on Facebook, you are the product. You don't pay Facebook, they use your data. Recruiters have jobs and they are paid to find people for those jobs. They will be in touch if you are right for that job. Recruiters have even basic systems where you can search databases for keywords. If you aren't right for one of Craig's jobs right now, he's not going to be calling you every week. And I think there needs to be that understanding that you're putting your CV into lots of recruiters' databases, spreading yourself across, lots of different options, and things will come up. Unfortunately, it might be after you found another job, but I think it's that politeness of every 6 months or so dropping them an email with an updated CV or an interesting project you've worked on. I like that idea that you stay top of mind. But the model doesn't work like that unless you are going to a career person who finds a job for you, which I think is available. I think that's a real service. I've never heard it work, but it could work.
Yeah. Gosh. See, it's really interesting with the whole connecting with people, because I think people need to also realize we're all human. I do have an ethos that I like to reply to candidates if they've applied through job boards or direct emails, and I do like to go back to people personally, because I think everybody does deserve a reply, even if it's a generic one. I think once people have been met for interviews, I definitely feel that they deserve feedback, whether that's a phone call. I'm working with a couple of clients at the moment who are all about giving personal feedback, and whilst it might take a week or so to give the final update and the feedback itself, they are categorically saying that has to happen, which is great, and there are companies out there that do it and believe it. I just think that understanding. It's also about, without sounding cliche, connecting with the right people, and the right people that are going to represent you and get you, and do keep in touch. And again, probably where I fall down is the keeping in touch bit, because I am a business of two. So, it is incredibly challenging, and I love to be responsive and I love to reply back to people. And but people do sometimes forget they are one of several thousand, emails in a week, which I think is an important thing. So I think coming back, connecting with the right people is key, and understanding people. I know you've done a great post on job searching and where to find jobs, and that list is amazing in the sense that it gives people real options to look at within the industry.
Yeah, I think if you are keen to start a quick Google search, there's lots of great stuff out there, right? People are really keen to support. And I think this whole early career series over the next 4 weeks, through these events and through blogs, and also just through our mentors sharing their experiences, which happens on Otolo, hopefully will give people a start. I've got this is hopefully a good question here. I don't know the answer to this unless I've got something wrong all these years. Are resumes different to CVs? Or are they the same thing?
I'm going to go same thing.
Same thing. Good stuff. Although here's a tip that I heard once. It was, you don't need to write CV at the top of your CV or resume, because as soon as you put James Christopher Lemon, it's obvious what it is. So you don't actually have to put CV on the CV itself. So it doesn't matter whether it's a CV or resume, because you don't actually need to write either on the CV. Is that?
I'm going to have to go back and check my CV to see if I fit in CV on my CV. I mean,
because it's so obvious. When you're writing a letter, you don't write at the top of the letter. You just start writing the letter.
Yeah. Wow.
Mind's blown.
But you do need to put more than reading or swimming or one-word hobbies. It is just the one that gets me every time.
Well, we've done a full circle now, right? I think this is exactly where we started. You have to have something that is a bit of a spark, right? You have to have something about you. There are a lot of applicants out there, and it's really important. If you're passionate about pursuing a career in something, it's really important you've gone that extra way. And I think it is. I'm going to really be real geek here. Is it okay that your hobby is building websites or running your own business? There's a genuine question for you. Is that okay to have that in your other interest session, like reading up about blockchain as an interest, or does it have to be a proper hobby? A genuine question.
Well, that's one for you, Gurj.
I'm a bit of a learning development geek, and to be honest, someone said to me, what are your hobbies? My hobbies are being a bit of a geek, and I probably should read other books and watch other stuff that's not around it, but that's me. And actually, if researching blockchain is your thing, then I think it shows a passion and I'm trying to justify my own hobbies now, and a sort of a diligence and towards a goal. To be honest, we talk, certainly in luxury, we talk about excellence a lot, and if you are trying to achieve excellence, then you've got to do the hard graft on that. So that's I think those niche hobbies are great.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting though, isn't it? But here's I guess the tip, right? It's okay if your favorite thing is listening to podcasts on luxury hospitality, but I think the key thing on CV is avoid cliche, right? I think if all you've got in your interest is love reading about luxury hospitality, it's just like I just don't get to know you a little bit. But if I read on a CV, I'm a little bit of a geek. I'm really passionate about all things customer excellence. I can't walk down the street without wondering why they create that experience. I'll probably be like, actually, this is my kind of person. So it's a bit different, isn't it? I think avoid cliches.
Or the one that I have seen recently is rather than, a thing or a hobby at the bottom of the CV, list your 3 top podcasts, or recently your latest or a current news article. Obviously there will be a need to keep it fresh, but to keep something, a review of a restaurant that you related to in a big way, for your favorite restaurant, really connect and make it that personal.
And you get a lot, I'm sure you guys get this a lot as well, like interview, again, for I'm sure no one listening to this would do it because you're already taking the first step and coming and getting great advice from experts like this. But, don't if someone says, what do you do in your spare time? Going out is not a credible answer. But, no, it's just not a credible answer. But if you have a passion for music festivals, you try and do 3 or 4 music festivals and you're really into niche bands and you go and seek out the most interesting bands doing something different with music, then I think it's fine. So one more technical question, then we'll finish with a fun one. Referees, where do we go with referees? Is this a later in the process thing, or do we do it at the start?
I leave it to the end because I'm trying to get as much on my CV as possible, so I won't even put them on. That's my stance on it. But and plus, I need time to check in with those referees to see if they want to give me a referral.
I think that's right. And
I think that's it. It's risky, right? It's a risky strategy. I think, particularly if you are looking and your company's not aware of it, it's probably better to kind of leave them off in the first instance. I see a lot of people put them on request, and I think that's probably enough in the first stages.
Yeah. Somewhere we've got some background noise, haven't we? Not sure what that is. No, absolutely right. And I'll give this away for the industry. If a recruiter asks you for a couple of referees, it's because they're going to call that person and ask if they've got any jobs going. Just so you know, that's why that box goes on the form when you apply for a recruiter. Right, and I'll finish with the fun one, which is a great one. Okay, are there hidden places to find a dream job? What have we not talked about? Where should you be going at any stage of your career? What's the best way to land that dream job?
Well, we're kind of saving that one for the next session, James.
There you go. So join the next session. So let's call it a teaser. Let's call it a teaser session. Give us a sense of what we might be learning about on the next session, Luce and Gurj.
So for the next session, we are going to be talking about the top job boards and the top job apps and kind of where you can find your tribe. So if you are looking for a specific dream job, obviously everyone's dream jobs are different. Mine would be marketing. James, yours would be probably hospitality and hotels, right? Or
I don't know what to say next.
Otolo or tech, it's different for everyone. So actually what we want to do in the next session, we're going to be joined by Naomi Hollis from Eventgrads, runs a great little community online. Me and Craig are going to be joining her to talk about all the amazing kind of little hidden gems and places that you can go. So yeah, be sure to switch in. I think the next session will be a good one.
Perfect. And Gurj, how about you? Where's the most interesting place you found a candidate? That might be a better way to put it.
Oh, the most interesting place I found a candidate. Oh, I might have to come back to you on that next week. I was going to go back to the dream jobs piece actually and say that I desperately wanted to get into marketing when I left university. So ended up going all around the houses and getting into a marketing role and helped rebrand a hotel in London and then was made redundant. And then actually on reflection thought, that wasn't my dream job at all because as an in-house marketeer, I was just doing a lot of ROI stuff and the agency was doing all the creative stuff. So I think sometimes there's something called effective projection where you think it might be a dream job, but actually when you start doing it, it's not. So I think, as we talked about earlier, start figuring out, I enjoyed that, I love doing that, oh, this is not good for me, and that wasn't so good. Before you end up at the wrong job.
I think that's a great way to finish. I could not agree more. And I think, well, one thing we haven't covered, we should definitely put it in one of our next sessions, is how do you make shifts during your career as well, right? If your experience doesn't necessarily reflect what you want to do next, how might you think about that? But I think there's some stuff you can draw out today. Craig, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I guess I'll just go back to the top line advice: keep it real, keep it relevant, and ready, and always lean in. I think the biggest piece of advice that I was given very, very late in my career was to lean in, and it was when I had my experience at Ennismore, who owned the Hoxton and various other companies, and it was by the CPO at the time, and she said, "You just need to lean in a little bit more," and I was like, "Sorry," and I leant in. And she's like, "No, you just need to lean in and, soak it all up and enjoy it." And so I did. And and I think that would be my general piece of advice for anybody. Build the right relationships, spend time with quality people that are going to add value to your life and your career journey, and soak it all up, enjoy it. Don't run on too far ahead. I think that's another key point. I think so many people are, particularly, I think it may be something that I'm seeing more and more of, but people are progressing really quickly and not necessarily enjoying that moment and that journey and development within their current role. So, yeah, that would be my best advice for what it's worth.
No, that's super useful. Good advice for life, not just writing a CV, I think. But I think I love it. So firstly, massive thank you to all of you for joining Craig and I here tonight. Hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the series over the next few weeks. But Gurj, amazing experience and keep up the great work. And Luce, I think you've got a really broad background, and I know you're available on Otolo. If anyone's got any follow-up questions, ping Luce, and she's made a commitment now. She always answers people when they ask for advice, so that's definitely going to happen. I think look, more broadly, early careers is really important to Otolo. We've got a lot of great university partners, but we also just know as the industry recovers, we need a lot of young people who become passionate about hospitality, really see it as a career and not a job. So all of February, we're going to have this early careers group. We've got mentors contributing their thoughts. We've got these events every week. We've got a kind of mentor speed dating event coming up as well. So get involved with Otolo, find the early careers group, leave us kind of what you're working on and what your challenge is. And between Gurj, Craig, Luce, myself, or one of the mentors, we'll definitely get back to you. You're not on your own, but Craig's absolutely right. Unfortunately, there's no easy answers. You have to spend a little bit of time on it. You have to figure out kind of what you do next, and you have to make that effort and lean in a little bit. But really appreciate your time for sticking with us. We've run a little bit over, but hopefully that's been useful stuff. So once again, Luce, Gurj, Craig, thanks a lot. Craig, I'll see you next week. But in the meantime, everyone, stay safe and thanks for joining us tonight.